there's a teaching technique where you guys have to do all the work at home and then you come in and we do activities, which I always like the sound of, and then I always chicken when I use it because you guys don't really. I saw those shoes online. All right, have you got everybody?
Everybody's here.
Did you pulled in the stragglers?
Yes.
All right.
We made it.
Okay.
He pulled him in.
All right. So we've got some oxygen and some glucose going to our brain. Hopefully, we can do just a little bit more. We've only got a few minutes. I can't remember which chapter we mentioned rate limiters earlier in the semester, right? And our rate limiter, when we're looking at constraints, is the system that is developing the slowest out of those that are relevant for the skill. So it slows down the skill, right? So the system that lags can be the one that is going to slow down when we see the skill develop. So for example, when a child is learning to stand up, they've got to do a lot of practice at standing up and balancing and getting their legs really strong before they can take a step and start walking. So we're not going to see walking until the brain believes that the system, the muscular system, is strong enough to support it. Right? So in that population, strength tends to be the rate limiter. Right? You can also apply the term rate limiter at the other end of the lifespan, the system that is breaking down the earliest, the quickest, can rate limit the kinds of moves we see. So if someone gets arthritis in a shoulder and that shoulder joint is deteriorating, then the skeletal system will rate limit the amount of movement that that person can create with that arm. Okay. So when we looked at prenatal development, we looked at a picture that had those little shadows in the middle of the legs and the feet, and said that those were the centers for bone growth in the fetus. Okay. Those little shadows of cartilage is where the bone, that's a primary ossification center, where the bone's going to start to be laid down from. Right. When we look at postnatal development in the bones, and we're looking at a long bone in this instance, because when you look at the bones in the skull and the bones in the wrist, it's a little bit different. But when we're looking at bone length for a long bone, postnatally, all right, I'm not very good at drawing, sorry. Then what we get is a secondary center, so it stops growing. Initially, in the fetus, it's laying down cells here and it's getting longer. Once you're born and you're getting longer or taller once you stand up, then that is coming from a secondary center on the end of the bone. Right? So we often call that the growth plate. The technical name is the epiphyseal plate. Okay. And we have them on the ends of our long bones in our arms, in our legs, in our fingers, in our toes. Okay. And extra new cells are put down on the end of the bone if the bone is stressed. Right. You lay down more cells, the bone gets longer. If what we want is the bone to get wider, then what happens when the bone gets wider, if that's a cross section, we lay down extra cells around the outside to see an increase in the width, in the girth of the bone. And that's called appositional growth. Important for nice, strong, heavy, dense bones. Right? Good nutrition, lots of weight-bearing exercise so that we have a lot of, we don't want really long, very narrow bones because that makes them very susceptible to force and breakage. Alright, so we don't keep growing, right, all our lives. We just looked at the growth chart and we said height stops in our late teens, and so our long bones stop growing. Okay. So at some point, this growth plate no longer produces new bone cells, and it fixes to the end of the bone, and that bone can't grow anymore. The stimulant for that happening is the sex hormone that gets released when you go into puberty. So either testosterone or estrogen is the stimulus for shutting down the growth plate. So once enough testosterone or enough estrogen have built up in the system, the epiphyseal plate shuts down and you stop growing in height. At least your legs and your arms stop growing. Okay, remember we still see some growth in the trunk. So now we have another reason why early maturers and late maturers are different heights. Right? Because the early maturer will shut down their epiphyseal plate sooner. The late maturer has longer to go. So oftentimes late maturers are taller than early maturers because that epiphyseal plate can keep putting down bone cells. Right? If you are working with children whose growth plate has not shut down, then we sometimes see injuries where there was trauma to the end of the bone, or if they're an athlete where they're doing a lot of twisting, they twist, and you can slide that growth plate off the end of the bone. Right? Which is very problematical because now the growth plate can't lay down bone cells and bone can't grow. They've got better at fixing this. Or you can crack it, is the other thing you can do. You can actually split the growth plate. Right? Pediatric surgery is much, much cleverer now than it was 30 years ago, and they're getting better at fixing this kind of injury. They can slide it back, they can kind of glue it or pin it if they need to. But if they can't fix that, then that bone stops growing. If you move the plate off, the bone stops growing. So as the person in charge, you need to be careful of that because, otherwise they're going to end up with one leg or one arm that's shorter than the other because the growth plate was moved off the end of the bone because they suffered an injury. So, as I said, twisting type injuries can do it, trauma, a hip at the end here, a really bad fracture, right? So you've got to take, again, how do I use this information in an applied situation? If I'm working with teenagers, younger children whose growth plate is not attached, then I need to be careful about the amount of force I'm asking those long bones to take. Right? I have to have an appropriate amount of force so that this injury can't occur. Right? Okay, so we'll pick up from there. Wednesday, we will finish chapter 5. Wednesday. Thursday, we will finish chapter 5. Next Tuesday is the review session for your exam. Next Thursday is your exam. So I would suggest you're looking at your textbook